Alright, so here again is the source footage that I shot. Alright, now here's what I did with it. You can see there's obviously some color difference between the two images. Okay, this is frame 1 here, this is frame 1 here. This is a bit, less contrasty, kind of blah. Where here, it's a bit more contrast, a bit darker in some of these areas. If you look at the sky back here and the sky here, you can tell there's a definite improvement in the sky. And obviously we have the big dragon dude sitting there. I've also included some stuff on the ground. You can see where he has his opening and you have these cracks in the ground where he's come up out of the ground. This is not a final, but this is as far as we're going to take it in the class. And as I hit play, you can see that the dragon's moving around too. And there's some smoke, just to give it a little bit of atmosphere. Okay, now it looks more difficult than it actually is. Of course, it's time consuming. I spent a few days just, making sure everything matched up and lined up and whatever else. But it's definitely something that's doable. I didn't model the dragon. That was actually something I downloaded from Creative Crash. Okay, so let's take a look at the process of this. So here is my Maya scene. And there's a dragon that I have set up. I have these, there's where he's coming out of the ground. And here is a bunch of rocks. Okay. And so I have a couple things in here I don't really need right now. Let me just hide those. Okay, now the way I got him to look like he's coming out of the ground is I just took my ground plane and I literally just cut a hole in it. Okay, so if I just isolate this, you see how there's a hole in there. And then I just put him, on top of it like that. And what's going to happen is this area with the hole, with this ground plane, is going to be, represented as our regular ground. And then the whole area is just going to be a hole. Now you'll see that he actually sticks through the hole. That's no big deal. Who cares? No one's going to see this. So I wanted to make sure I had a good scale with him. Okay. And what I did was I went through, and he's not a perfect rig. If I zoom in on some of these body parts, you can see how his wings are like intersecting each other. You don't even see it on the final one. Okay. And there's actually a spot where, the rock is intersecting this, but because of the angle, you just don't see it. Okay. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to look like, a bit fancy. And all my animation in this, if I go to my control here, there you go. You can see just on this little wing part, okay, I was able just to kind of move the wing around and set some keyframes. So if I wanted this to kind of be up like that, I just made sure, nothing looked too horrible. And then I would just hit S to set a key on all of those controls. Then I move up a little bit, move it again, hit S to set a key on those controls, move it up, and so on. And I would do that for the head area. And I would do it for this area here. This is kind of like his back and shoulders. And there's a couple other controls that are inside here too. It's a pretty simple rig. There's a couple things I really didn't care for in the rig, but for what it needed to be, it was exactly what I wanted. Okay. He also had some facial controls here, where if you're using Maya 2014, some of these aren't going to work correctly. Okay. So just keep those things in mind. You don't have to put a dragon in here, but you don't have to do a whole lot of work either as far as putting something in there. Like I said, I downloaded this from Creative Crash, found a good character rig of a dragon, dropped him in, and there we go. Okay. I did update all of his materials so that they were Mia's because they came in as blends. So what I did was I just went through and I found, like for instance this is the dragon wing. So I right clicked on it and said select objects. Okay, and right now it's not going to select anything, so let me find my Mia's. Oh, those are fawns. Mia. And of course I didn't name anything. Select objects. There we go. So like this one, see how it selects the face? Then I was able just to go through and say assign new material. or favorite, Mia. And then when I clicked on this and graphed it out, it had a bump map and it had a color map. And all I did was just drag my color map, middle mouse button, drag it onto color, took the reflectivities and whatnot down, go down to the bump, middle drag the bump, onto the bump, and that was it. Okay, it's a pretty simple setup, nothing fancy. You could probably get away with doing, flatter colors if you had a different kind of object, but I really wanted to make sure that the dragon's texture showed, because it's really kind of important to the workability of this whole thing. Okay, so now in Nuke, this is going to look confusing, and you're probably going to want to just kill me for even showing this. Look at those. Because I have several different areas here that kind of go into, obviously, that final right node that we're all after. Okay, I don't need that grade. And if we look at this in just a very simple step-by-step way, it'll make more sense. Okay, so my first part here, this is my dragon over in this area. And if we look at this, I have my dragon rendering right here. I reformatted it. My rendering was taking forever, so I actually rendered this out at not this one, but 960 by 540, and then I stretched it out to fit. Okay, there's nothing wrong with doing something like that too if you're in a time crunch. So I reformatted it. I'll get into some of this other stuff in a little bit. These are all just color corrections, just getting my stuff to match. If I take off my color corrections, let's go to that area there. And I disable my color corrections, you can see that there's a definite color difference between the stuff I rendered and the stuff that's in scene. Okay, now that's just because the color I picked for the rocks out here, once rendered, didn't turn out to be that same gray. So I added some color corrections just to get it closer to looking like it's in the scene. Okay, and I had a blur that I didn't need. There's another mask here for the dragon. Yeah, they just kind of desaturated some of this stuff down here. Filter on it. Okay, so that's all that stuff is. Alright, color corrections. I do have an ambient occlusion pass. So there's my ambient occlusion. And I reformatted the ambient occlusion because, again, different size. I did a grade to it just to kind of punch it up a little bit. And then merging it on top, you can see the result of that. And I'll probably actually take this down in a later version. Okay, and then I added some grain to it. Might be hard to see in the video, but it definitely is there. And then that's the dragon comp itself. Okay, so we're going to get into this right now, is to, how do we get this stuff to render out? Okay, what do we need to actually render? Alright, and then what is this guy over here? Alright, well, this all goes back to our very first assignment, which was that robot comp, is just rendering this stuff out. So if I go to my render layers, you'll see that I have a color render layer, an AO, and a mats. Okay, so we're going to focus on color first. And what I did to create these is I went through and I grabbed my very first object, not my cameras up here, my very first object, scrolled down, grabbed my very last object, and then I just made a new render layer. And I called it, come on, color. Okay. Oops, I just deleted all my objects. Alright, let me reopen my file because I broke it. Okay, and also keep in mind, this is my process. Your process might be a little bit different. Alright, so here's my color layer. And what I did was I went to render settings. Once you have the color layer, you can do stuff to this. It doesn't affect anything else inside your scene. I went to passes, and what I did was I output the UV pass, the depth pass, diffuse, incandescence, indirect, all these other passes. I didn't use any of them. If you look at my final comp, here's my pass, my rendering right there, and then I reformatted it, and then all of these grades have nothing to do with my actual render passes, okay? So for my beauty pass, which is essentially what this is, all I really need is that alpha channel, okay? And if you look at this, you'll actually see that I actually, forgot to turn this off, and so I rendered part of this alpha channel here. And so what I was able to do is come down here with a grade and just get rid of that, okay? So I literally just graded the alpha channel just to get rid of this stuff, because all this stuff here, this is pretty much pure white, except for these edges where there's a little bit more. You can see there's a little bit of a change, but it didn't really affect it to the point where I needed to worry about it, right? So what I did was when I did my initial rendering in here, you can ignore pretty much all these passes, okay? Unless you want to play with them, then you can add them in, but you don't really need them if you don't need them. So create a render pass is how I did it. I went down and grabbed, typically if you're doing Mia's, you would grab the diffuse, you would grab the camera depth, you would grab incandescence, indirect, you would grab, I like to grab raw shadow too, which I didn't grab there, reflection, refraction, shadow also grab specular, and translucence, and then UV and world pass too, okay? And the UV and world pass are if, you needed to relight something out there, you could do that too. Yep, that should be good. So I would create those and then add it in there. Now another two that I would add in too are these 2D motion vector and 3D motion vector. I'd also add those in as well. Okay, now once you create them, they'll go into this top box here. And then what we have to do is just use this to say link, and then it'll link them into that list. Okay, so then when I render this out, I also make sure that I have this set to OpenEXR, and then I choose some kind of compression. RLE is pretty good. I've had no issues with that, so I would choose that. Make sure you have your start frame, your end frame going, your camera ready, the resolution. Like I said, you could do 960 by 540 and scale it up if you needed to. Quality is turned up. I didn't do any motion blur here. I did all that in post. And then I did do a little bit of final gather. Okay, so if we do look at this final piece here, I do have, here's my camera depth, which if I crank this the correct way, you can see I do have some depth, so I could add some stuff in there. I have my diffuse layer, I have my incandescence, which is nothing, I have my indirect lighting, which is there, my matte, which is there, my reflection, my refraction, which is none, my shadow, it's hard to see, but it is there, okay, and my spec pass, and my UV pass, and my world position, and that's it, okay. But like I said, the most important thing is just getting that alpha channel to render out so that we don't have, so we have the alpha of the dragon cut out, because we'll need that, okay. And that's also, I don't think I clicked on that one when I was showing it, this matte here I also added in just to make sure that I would get a clean matte of that, right. And then making sure that in here in Maya that we have all of these things set to, I don't really need, come on, this here is not influencing my rendering at all, okay. I put that there, actually I put this here for a shadow when I showed the car, but this guy I don't really need, so he doesn't even need to be on this layer, so I can just right click and say remove from layer, okay. I need the ground because he's interacting with the ground. I need this back plane because it's interacting with the back plane. I need this because of the alpha channel. Okay, but everything else I don't need. Alright, so I just make sure that those things are set correctly, and their MIP mat, if I go to them, has multiple outputs checked, and I have, their appropriate stuff set up on here. Okay. Now I did do a separate ambient occlusion pass. This was done just by, again, grabbing everything. Then I right-clicked, attributes. I went to presets, went to occlusion, whammo, created this. And then I can just use the arrows to get here, and I just adjusted this max distance and the spread to get a good value. And if you look at my values down here, those are pretty good values, right? And I could, like I said, grade it and darken up some of these things. And I just used the grade and I just multiplied it and pulled the offset down. If I disable that, re-enable it, you can see what I'm getting. Okay. And then if you needed to do that little trick we did before, the reason I did this on a separate layer is in case I needed to, not have ambient occlusion on some of my pieces. Okay, like maybe the ground is, or the ground in this piece are causing some ambient occlusion between them. I could turn it off so they don't self-shadow each other. Okay, and then my last one is mats. And what I did here is I grabbed my major pieces that maybe I want to adjust the color on just the dragon, or just this opening, or just these blue rocks. Okay, and what I did was I grabbed them, I went to my material, and I assigned a surface shader. And all I did was go into my color and just pick, green. Okay, now I stuck to 3 colors. I stuck to red, green, blue. Keep it simple. You could also do white. That would also work. But what I'm able to do inside of here, right here, is I reformat it. There it is, reformat, always. And then I did a copy. And so all I'm doing here is I'm copying my red channel into a new mask called Dragon, my green channel into a new mask called Ground, and my blue channel into a new mask called Rocks. Okay, so let me show that again. And we've done this before. So my A is going to go here, my B would go into the reformat, and I would just say I want to copy the red channel into a new mask, and I'll call this one dragon.mask. Yes. And I would say copy the green into a new mask, ground.mask, and copy my blue into a new mask, rocks.mask. Okay, so now I have 3 masks that I could reference and do things to. So if I added a grade here, and then I said, okay, well, let me view this. I'm going to pull this gain down a little bit. Well, I don't want to affect the whole image. I just want to affect a certain spot, like maybe the dragon. So I would come to my mask, and I would choose dragon. Where is he at? Dragon.mask. There we go. So right now, all I'm doing is affecting what the dragon looks like. So individually, I can manipulate the dragon's pieces. Okay, or I can even go into my color, and I could start tinting some of my coloring here. So if I want a different color dragon, I could get that as well. Okay, this might not seem like a huge deal, but this is a super powerful thing. Imagine a car where the red on the car is just not the exact red you need. It's much easier just to render out a mask, adjust the mask coloring, or the color via the mask, and then you could go from there. Okay, so I rendered that out so that I would have this, so I could edit each piece individually. So I copied it in there, I edited the alpha channel, I edited the dragon, everything but the dragon. If you look at this, I actually inverted it. So I said I want to adjust the rocks here, but not the dragon. So if I switch this invert, you'll see that the dragon's is being colored, and here the rest of it's being colored. Okay, and then here's another one I did to it. Here's another one I did to it. And that's just for the rocks outside. And then I adjusted the dragon's color. And then I adjusted some more stuff on the inside. And then I did an erode. Okay, if I look at the dragon, I'm getting this little bit of a halo around him. So what I did was I eroded that mask. Come on. No, right. I eroded it. You can't see it because it's in the alpha. And then I pre-multiplied it just to cut him out from the background. Okay, the background stuff here doesn't matter. This is all just dragon. Just this one element of my dragon with his shadow. And then I merged this on top of it. Okay, So what I'm doing in this case is this here is just adjusting what the dragon's looking like. And then I have a shadow here that gets merged on top of it. Okay, and that just gives me just a little bit of a different coloring and shadow. And then I took the ambient occlusion, reformatted it, graded it, and multiplied it into that. Okay, and then I added a little bit of grain. I'll make this a little bit more pronounced so you can see it. There you go. Now you can definitely see that grain happening inside there. Okay, and I just wanted it to be, you know, subtle. Okay, so that was just getting the dragon rendering all nice and neat. Okay, now it didn't happen, you know, just like that where I was just like, boom, let's get this. You know, it happened in a way where I rendered out my passes. I reformatted it. I came into Nuke and I realized, you know what, I need to be able to adjust the coloring on each piece individually. So I jumped back to Maya, created this mats layer, and then I rendered that out. Then I was able to come in here and copy it in and adjust all of these things individually. Okay. And there it is. There's my grain. Okay. So now this right here, this box is my dragon element. Dragon, rocks, whatever. Okay. And then what I wanted to do was I needed a little spot where I could have the ground look like it's kind of broken up. So I found this image of a broken up ground. I did a little bit of a grade to it just to kind of deepen some of these crevices. And then I did another grade on it to lighten it up to match the coloring inside there. Okay. And then I did a roto on it. And if you look at the roto shape here, it's kind of like this weird shape. I didn't want to have just a block because that looked weird. And then I pre-multiplied it to cut it out. Okay, remember when we do a roto, all this does is just kind of define where we want to cut out, but the pre-mult actually cuts it out. Okay, so then what I had to do is I had to get this thing placed. Where's my footage? I had to get this placed right on here. Okay, now think of it like Photoshop. Think of it like we have, you know, a layer of our background video, and I need to have another layer of that ground being broken, and then I have to have another layer of my dragon on top of this, then I have another layer of smoke on top of this. Okay, so this is my top layer, which is my dragon. This is going to be my middle layer between my background plate and my dragon. All right, but I also have to make sure that it moves with it. Here, no big deal. We did this inside of PF Track. We tracked it, we brought it into Maya, rendered it out, and it all matched up perfectly. Okay, but this, we have a solid image now. Okay, this solid image has no animation on it at all. Even if I were to rotate it and position it and do whatever, it still wouldn't move with the camera. So what I did was I came into Maya and I said I want to get, let me switch back to my master layer here. I want to get the movement of this camera. There it goes. The movement of this camera so that I can take that into Nuke and I can match something up to it. Okay. So if we look at the outliner, this camera is actually inside a couple groups. Okay. And that's how we kind of lined it up, is we had to do that in order to get this thing to work perfectly. So what I did was I needed to match this camera perfect. So I can't take it out of the group because that'll kind of screw stuff up. I can't export this camera and bring that into Nuke exactly like it is because it won't have all of this other stuff. So what I did was I created a brand new camera. Okay, I'll call this one to Nuke camera. And I clicked on my moving camera. I control clicked my to Nuke camera, and I went to constrain point. See how it moves that new camera right on top of the other one, and then I went to constrain orient, and now it puts it in the exact same spot. And then what I also have to make sure I do is just match up the settings. So this one is 25.343. So I grab my 2 nuke camera, set that, go back to this camera, and I think I can actually just right click and say copy, and then go to my new camera and paste. Nope, can't do it. 1.092.614. There we go. Okay, so now that I have that, now it's weird because I did this to this other camera, and I didn't adjust anything. It's all just like the exact setup as the other one, or as the default, and it worked fine. This one, it should work just like that. I guess we'll find out. So what I did was, now that I have this camera here, and it matches perfectly with that one, there's no keyframes on it. It's going to follow it, but there's no keyframes. So what I have to do is go to File, or Edit, Keys, Bake Simulation. And what this is going to do, I believe this is the default, yes, is it's going to run through, and it's going to match the movement of that camera. You see how it's following it around? And it's just setting keyframes, keyframes at each interval. And then what I can do is then take this camera that I've just kind of, basically it's matching the movement of the other camera, and I can export that out. Okay, so I'm just going to hit escape because I already have a camera that does that. And then I'm going to go to Export Selection. And anytime we're going from Nuke, Maya into Nuke, or pretty much any program into any program 3D, we just export it as an FBX. So we just choose FBX from the list and choose to Nuke Camera. You'll get a warning, ignore it. And then when we come into Nuke, what we have to do is we create a camera. So there's my camera. I'll just make a new one so you can see it. And then under the File area, we go to Read from File, and then we find it. It says, are you sure you want to do this? Yes. All right. So now if we look at this camera, let me close my other cameras here. There's the camera. And as I hit play, you'll see that it matches that movement. Okay, so basically what we've done is we brought the animation in from Maya into Nuke. Okay, and it only has up to, whatever, however far we go here, 168. But it is there. Okay, so now you brought the camera in. So what I'm also going to do is say, okay, well, I have the camera. Now I want to take my ground plane in too. All right, now I didn't want to take this ground plane in that has a hole in it because it doesn't really work good and it's all stretched out. So I created this other ground plane that matches the exact spot where I want this plane to be that I'm going to put an image on. Okay, and I did set a key for it, just one key. And then I went to Export Selection. I said to Nuke underscore ground. And then inside here, I went and did a read geo, because I'm reading geometry, to Nuke ground, and there's my ground. And you'll see, there's the ground, here's my camera. And if I look through my camera, there it is. Now here was a test for this, because I, to Nuke camera shape. I went back to frame 1, let me grab this ground. That's not the one. I had a couple here that I was playing with. There it is. Okay, and I'm going to hit this blue circle here so I can see my resolution gate. I can see where this is cutting off. Inside here, I had to make sure that that was lining up perfectly also. At one point, because this took a little bit of playing because it just wasn't coming in correctly. Let me go to camera 2, yes. You can see camera 2 is just slightly off. And there was another camera right here that was really off. You can see how far off this is, okay? So it took some playing to get it, but that's the way I had to do it. And I kind of looked and said, okay, there's a little gap here, line up there, perfect. So now these two things are lined up. So now all I have to do is create a scene node, scene, that guy, drop an image in here. So I'll just use this image. And now you'll see that this is going to match up perfectly with that. I didn't even render this. You know, I could have gone into Maya, rendered out this one pass, but now I have a bit more freedom in here to do other stuff. Okay, so if I read this from my pre-mult, you'll see that now I just have this little blobby area that's going to be where the ground is. Okay, so that's all I did right there. So this is all just creating that piece of geo. There it is. And here's my scene where the camera is going to go into, and here's my scanline render. I added a little bit of grain to it. Okay, again, it's probably hard to see in the video, but it is there. Alright, and then I just dropped it on top of the ground. And then, you know, I went back to this grade and this grade, and I just kept tweaking these things until I got them to look like it was part of the ground. You can see the difference here. Okay, and in the back it doesn't really look very good, but you can't see it because the dragon's there. Alright, so that's how I got this ground plane just to be lined up. Now I could have also done that back here. I could have matched up something in Maya where I wanted this wall to be replaced, and I could have just exported that too, and then brought it in. I could have done the same thing on these doors. If I didn't like these doors, I could have matched up something inside Maya, rendered it out, or not rendered out, but exported that geometry, brought it in here, and replaced that. Okay, so these are really, really powerful tools. You just have to kind of play with them a little bit to understand them so that you can apply it to your work. All right, and then this last little bit is in two parts. Okay, this part up here and this part down there. Okay, and all this is sky replacement. All right, if we look at the sky back here, and I disabled this. Oops, not disable that. Let me look at my original footage. There we go. See, the original footage, the sky is like totally blown out. You can't even see a cloud in the sky, and to me that just looked horrible. You know, we don't want something like that. I want to have more control over it. So I needed to cut it out. So what I did was I did a Roto Shape. And this Roto Shape basically is just circling what I want to replace. Okay, so here's my Bezier shape. I went to the beginning of the footage, I drew the shape in there, and then I went every 10 frames. So see this little 10 right here? You can just click this little arrow and it'll just jump 10 frames. And then I just move this thing just to outline essentially where that piece of footage was. Okay, I tried tracking it a couple times, and it was as far as the motion in the back, it was just too blurry for it to really get a good track back there. Okay, so I just let it go, let it go, let it go, and I just kept moving it into position. Okay, until I had basically that whole thing circled for the entire video. And then I pre-multiplied it. Again, cuts it out. So now my footage basically reads just this. I did a grade on it just to kind of crunch it in to see exactly where the sky is. The sky was already pretty white. Alright, now there are some chunks in here. If we look at the original, this is actually a building here, and my crunching is actually still bringing some of that building as far as what it looks like the sky, but that's fine because it's so far in the background you don't even see it. And then I did a luminance keyer. Okay, so that pulled off a key. I didn't need to dilate. I pre-multiplied that. I did another luminance key, and I graded it, and I eroded it, and then I pre-multiplied it. Okay, now all that's giving me is an alpha channel. There's nothing here. You see there's nothing in my actual footage, but when I go to my alpha, there it is. All right, so that's what I'm looking at, is just the alpha channel inside here. Okay, so that's what, as you create a key, that's what we're looking for, is that alpha channel, creating a nice black and white map. Now again, I didn't do this all in one step. You know, I didn't start here and know exactly what things I needed. Let me start with my footage over here, and I'll actually bring my roto also over. There we go. So I had this where basically just this isolates the sky. And then I decided to do a grade on this just to kind of emphasize where the sky is, because you can see there's a lot of like in-between values here. So I just played with these, not offset. If you play with offset, you see how it's pulling that up. I don't want to do that. Oh, the black point, white point. Okay. So I play with my black point here. There we go. And my white point, just to kind of pull these so that I had more contrast between my sky and that. And what I'm doing is I'm creating, basically I'm kind of forcing the area where the alpha should be. Okay? Something like that. And then I did a keyer on it. And again, I'm going to look at the alpha channel, and you can see on the sign there's little bits of gray. So I'm pulling it up, pulling this white in. I really need to get all that, or most of it anyway, off of that sign. And my grade here is just a little bit different, so then, you know, I went back to that grade, and maybe I adjusted some of my colors. There we go. So just adjusting some of my white points, I'm able to tweak some of that stuff. Okay, and what I'm looking at is that line. Okay, I wanted to have a nice line there for that kind of stuff, for that sky area. Okay, and then I did a pre-mult just to apply these things to it. And then I did a grade, or another keyer. Okay, but again, I didn't do all these at once. Okay, so let's leave it just the way it is right now. All right, so I had this where basically here's my sky cut out. So what I've generated is an alpha channel. Okay, there's the alpha, there's the other stuff. So I need to combine this with this picture of a sky that I have. Okay, and if we look at the setup down here, this setup is the same setup we used for this. Okay, here is the camera movement that we brought in from Maya. And then what I did was I took that sky, I put it on a card, and that's it. Drop it into a scene, blah, 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 blah. There we go. Okay, so I'll do that again. Let me copy my sky here. Now I could, just so you can see, if I merge this and view it, oops, and swap it, you'll see that I'm getting some like streaking stuff here. But in this, we don't really have anything. We've generated an alpha channel, okay? So what I need to do is take this and use the alpha channel from this on my original piece of footage. So what I'm going to do is I used a copy. So I went K for copy. There's my original footage. And so what I'm doing is I'm copying the alpha channel into this area. Okay? Now it comes out blasted because I need to pre-multiply it. And this is the, you know, not the way that we're going to be doing this. All right. And I'll also see, you know, from here, this is streaking. So that's why, because this one is a bigger size. So I reformat it to fit. This is completely white because my alpha channel is backwards. So I would add in an invert. And I don't want to invert all of them. I just want to invert my alpha. And then it pre-multiplies it, so it cuts it out. It merges it on top of there, and there's my sky. Okay. Now what's going to happen, though, is that as my foreground is moving, my sky does not move at all. Okay. I could add a transform in here, adjust where this is at. There we go. And you can see that even better, where it basically looks like there's a picture of a sky behind our stuff. Okay, so it definitely needs to move with our area. All right, so let's just delete this merge. Let's delete this transform. Let's delete the reformat. Okay, we do need this like that. Okay, and you can see how choppy this alpha channel is. All right. So what I need to do is I'm going to take my stuff here, Okay, so I just created a card. It was the same kind of card we used on the keying assignment for our model. And I moved it just really far back. Okay, you can see its Z is negative 100. Okay, I also rotated it 180 because it came in upside down. Okay, not a big deal. I just flipped it. And then I added it into a scene with my camera that's animated. And so now what I have, and I adjusted it too. I moved the card where I wanted that card to be. Now as I hit play, you can see that that sky is now moving with my scene. Okay, so now what I can do is I can take these two and merge them together. Oops. So now if I hit play, you'll see that the sky is going to move with my background plate. Okay, it doesn't look like it's summoning yet. You can see these edges are horrible. But it definitely looks like it's moving with it, which is, you know, obviously a key factor that we need to have established. Okay, so this is where I came back into this and said, okay, all the stuff, let me scoot this stuff up. Like that. Okay, all the stuff right here is just going into developing that alpha channel. Okay, so what I did was I went through and just played around with some more stuff. So if I look at what the alpha channel looks like here, I can say, you know what, it looks a little bit too crisp. So maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to erode it. Okay, and this is, if you looked at my branch, I had a couple different things that I played with. And if I look at my alpha, because it's not going to do it to, you know, it'll do it to the color. Okay, but I need it to do it to the alpha. That's the important part. Okay, so if I look at the alpha, it's kind of expanding it. Okay, so it's creating basically a good area to mask off. And I think in my grade, I think I just want to do the alpha channel there. Okay, so now that I probably have a good area of where I'm doing this, let's go back and do another keyer. And again, look at the alpha channel. I'm just pulling in these values some. I don't want to, you know, right against each other because that's where we get the fuzziness happening, or that sharpness. So there's a little bit of fuzziness here. I'm also going to add a blur. And I'm just going to blur the alpha. And that'll help soften some of these edges. Okay, no blur, blur. Okay, now the real trick, or the real key, is to look at this at the end. So let's look at this with our footage on here and see, okay, that's looking better. Okay, and I can disable the blur. I could even go and maybe play with the erode. Nope, I can go and play with the keyer. Maybe we can get a better result if we adjusted the keyer some. Yep, I think that's really helping it. Okay, and I have to look at it from, you know, these individual branches, but also I have to look at these bigger areas. Pull it up. Let's see, way too crisp here. There we go. I think that should be sufficient there. Okay, so I'm always kind of bouncing around. You know, I do the base setup just to get it going, take it as far as I can before I have to go back and start adding stuff and tweaking stuff. Okay, and I even think that I did a I copied the alpha inside here. There it is, and I dilated it, and then I did a hue correct. Okay, so that might be a little confusing. Let me show you what I did. Is I wanted to adjust some of these colors. All right, so I went and said, okay, well, I need to do a hue correct. All right, so basically I want to take off some of these edges, and as I move my mouse over these edges, I can see it's in this area. That's where that line is moving. So I went to luminance, and I can pull those things down. Okay, but I don't want to do it to the whole image because that's just not working out right. I want to do it just to this area here up in the sky. So I went to, I believe this is even before, Yeah, this is even before I did my other stuff. Okay, so before I even added the sky in here. Go back to luminance. Pull this down. So it's not affecting the sky at all, it's just affecting this area. So what I want to do is I want to use this mask. I want to create a mask that's just this area here. So if I look at my alpha channel, I essentially have that inside of several of these. Okay, if I go to this one, I have that right there. That's what I want to adjust. So if I use this on my keyer, and I'm actually going to go to the blur keyer, pull this over, and look at this again. Okay, I'm doing this hue correct on here, just in that area. Okay, so you can see it's just in this area here, where I can really play with those edges now to get those edge colors to blend a bit nicer. Okay, and if I needed to, on this one I added a dilate, which is an erode. I could say I just need an erode. Drop it on here. And then what this is going to do is it's just going to pull this out a bit more, just so I have a little bit more to work with. That's all it's doing. Okay, and obviously I went too far with that erode because it's pulling off some of the building here. And maybe we'll take some of the saturation down in that area too. Yeah, the good test is just, go crazy with the setting and see, what's going on with it. Yeah, I think I went maybe too far with some of these settings. I'm not doing anything. Yeah, they went the wrong way with this erode. There you go. Yeah, I went past the part of me adjusting it. Well, I couldn't see anything. There we go. So I have to stay in the negative in order for this erode to work. In this case, I don't even think I need the erode. I think my mask was just good enough where it was working without it. Okay, so that looks pretty good right there. I'm happy with the way that sky looks. And it matches the movement. Okay. So I just rebuilt that right there. That's all this is. Okay. And again, it's going to be different every time you do it. My alpha channel here. If you look at that alpha channel. And we look at this alpha channel, you can see there's a slight difference. Actually, like my new alpha channel, just slightly better. Okay. Alright, so it's never going to be the same every single time. It's just a matter of kind of flowing with it and seeing what you get. So here's where I'm merging those things together. And this is essentially all my elements coming together as this chain right there. Okay. So I have this right here, which is, oops, this merge right there is my sky coming together with my background plate. Okay. Think of it, like I said, in Photoshop terms. This is sky and background plate coming together. This one is my ground patch and my sky and background plate coming together. Now, I have all my stuff here still, so if I needed to go to my roto, it's kind of odd, the shape of it right here, but there's my shape. I can adjust this, and you'll see how it's going to adjust inside my viewport, and I can tweak what this is looking like. If I need to pull in maybe a little bit more here or there or wherever, I can do that relatively quickly. Okay. Or what I can do, as I've done this too, is I right click and I split this horizontally. I'll right click here, add a new viewer, and then my new viewer can look at the roto. So over here, I'm looking at the roto in a flat state, which makes it a lot easier to tweak. And then over on the left, I can see what the changes are that's happening to it. And again, nothing's set in stone. You know, just kind of go with the flow of how this is turning out, and you tweak things the way you need to tweak them. You can see here I pulled this point way too far off. It's not going to give me good results. There we go. And I did do a little bit of feathering on this. Okay, and I probably could use some color adjustments on this side too, but for right now it's good. And then I can right click and I can close that pane when I'm done with it. And then viewer goes away. Okay, so that's what that one is, just that patch coming in. The next one is my dragon coming in. I'm going to turn this now down to proxy of 4 so that it goes a bit quicker. And then what I wanted to do is I needed to have, my dragon was a little bit too crisp and clean. Right now it's proxied, so it's blurry. So one of my renderings that I did was this M2V, this motion vector. And what this motion vector is a way for me to basically render out motion blur without rendering out motion blur. So here's my dragon, and I did a shuffle copy where I chose from here this M2V, from here motion, and I just picked boom, 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 these three here, and then I added a vector blur. And the way the vector blur works is it allows me to go through, I'm going to put this back to 1. It allows me to go through afterwards and just adjust the blurriness of the sky. Okay, I can also adjust the time frequency and where this is at, and you know, several different settings. I did have to choose from the UV channel motion, forgot about that. And then, you know, my method of forward or backwards stuff. Typically I left all this the same. Backwards here, no grow. This was defaulted to -1. And I just played with this until I got a good result. Okay. Now look at it throughout, and then you'll get some motion blur on this, and then you're good to go. And then I did my smoke. So here's my footage of smoke. A little bit of a time offset. I merged it on top and adjusted my mix. I added my vignette, and then I wrote it out. Okay, now obviously I'm making it simpler-ish than it actually was, but take it in steps. Okay, take it and say, okay, the first thing I did was I added the dragon to the scene. I need to make sure the dragon gets cut out. I need to make sure that I have the coloring corrected. So then I came into Nuke and I did all that stuff. And I said, okay, well now I need the ground to work. So I added this ground thing, made sure that worked. And I made sure that the ground moved with my footage. I needed to change the sky, so I added that in here. And of course I need the alpha channel for that to add in there. And then I added my vignette, which is something we always do. And then I added the smoke, which is, you know, a nice addition to the top of it. And I could keep going with this. I could add a whole lot more stuff to this too. One of my thoughts was to get rid of this building and have a whole scene back here, but I just thought I'd keep it simple for the assignment and just, you know, cut the dragon or cut the sky out, replace the sky, and go from there. Okay. And then what I did was I also brought this into After Effects, and then using some additional settings, some additional adjustments inside of there, I added some more color correction as well to my final piece of footage. Okay. And once my video opens, you'll be able to see the here it is. You can see the color difference from here inside Nuke to there. All right. You can see in this where it's very low contrast. Here we've boosted the contrast a bit. And the reason I did in After Effects is just because it's quicker. And they have this thing called looks, where I can go through and choose basically like an Instagram type thing, where I just kind of pick which look I like, and then I can use it as a starting point to what I want my final look to be. And there it is. Okay. So that's the assignment. Take it one step at a time. Think about, you want to add the certain element. What can you do to add that certain element in there? What do you need to do to get that element to match your footage? As far as the coloring, right now you can see this doesn't match at all because I've adjusted some stuff I have to undo. And it's cutting this off, so I have to fix that as well. What things can you add to your scene to really make it kind of sell and look like those items are in there? Also, for your demo reel, this is a great thing to kind of show. You're not just kind of slapping 2 or 3 elements together. You're showing a wide range of things. Basically, you're showing a company that whatever you need done, you need sky replacement, you need something here, you need something wherever, I can do that. Okay? And that's, obviously one of the important things to have in your reel is your ability to show your versatility. Whatever you need done, I can get it done. All right? So that's our dragon footage. Render it out. Take your screenshots, and there we go.